Hi, I'm Medi Ivy Harrison. I'm a national best-selling author and I am a writing mentor. And this is a chance for you to get a free 20-minute video session with me and a 5-page read. I'm doing a special offer to let people see what I can do for them. So I thought I would give a list here of some of the very, very common things that people tend to struggle with who I work with. So number one on this list is your brain telling you to quit before you fail. This is in part because writing matters so much to you. Your expectations are so high, and the survival mechanism in your brain feels like, oh, better quit first because this is so traumatic. This might end in some horrible failure, so better to quit first. So every time you sit down, you're going to think up a million things that you should do instead of this one. Or you're going to stare at a blank screen because every time you think of a sentence, your brain tells you over and over again that's not good enough. Some of the other really common problems that I have with people are that they're writing the wrong book. So you may be writing the wrong book if some part of your brain is telling you that you aren't a good enough writer to write the book that matters to you. And that may be hidden fairly deep, but that's one of the things I do is I call people out and say, you're not writing the right book. The book that you need to write is a more dangerous and scary book than the one that you think that you're supposed to write. Another thing that I will tell you is that you may still be working on a book from 4 or 5 years ago, sometimes your first book from 10 or 15 years ago, and you have become a better writer and a better person than that book is. And you need to leave it by the wayside and move on to better ideas because you cannot fix that book. That book is a product of a writer who's not as good as the writer that you are now. And it's difficult to let go of your attachment to the book and your desire to fix it. But that is one of the things that you need to do. One of the things that I'm going to suggest for you is to have small goals. Small goals are less scary, and you're going to tend to have less procrastination if your goal is to write 100 words or one sentence than it is if your goal is to write 10 pages in a day. When your goal is too high, you're going to think of all of these other things that you have to do and procrastinate again. Sometimes you'll do things so that you pretend that you're not procrastinating. Super important things will always come up when it's time for you to sit down at the keyboard, and those things come up when you have bigger goals. But if your goal is just to read through the last page that you wrote and write one more sentence, that'll be pretty easy. And you'll think to yourself, I can check that off my list, and maybe you'll stay and write some more. One of the things that I may talk to you about is prioritizing your life. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. People who write are people who prioritize. They're people who figure out what the best time of day is for them to write, and they're honest with themselves. Lots of people are not morning people. I am a morning person, and sometimes I would wake up at 5 a.m. and that was the best time of day for me to write. Writing at 10 p.m. was terrible for me. Writing at 10 p.m. may be great for you. Writing at lunchtime may be great for you. Writing right after you exercise may be great for you. I don't know what your best time is, but you need to find out what that is, and then you prioritize your writing by giving it to that best time when your brain is most on. Another thing that I need to keep saying to you is the Anne Lamott shitty first draft thing. A lot of writers have this problem because they compare their writing, their shitty first draft, to someone else's finished book. I have this problem still as a writer because I compare this draft of the book that I'm currently working on with the manuscript that is ready for publication. I just did a final pages pass where I made like 6 corrections in a manuscript. That book is almost perfect, or as perfect as I can currently make it right now. And the book that I'm working on is not perfect. It's very far from perfect. And that can be very painful. And you have to like remind yourself repeatedly, shitty first draft, shitty first draft. This is how we get to a better book. We give ourselves this acceptance and love that the only way to get to the better, second draft or third draft is to get through this process of, just getting it down. It doesn't have to be perfect. Another problem that I may talk to you about is that you've gone off track. This is frequently a problem with people who are stuck in the middle of a book. Okay, I do this to myself all the time, and I'm just gonna tell it to you. If you are stuck in the middle of a book, it is because you have gone off track. I guarantee it. You have to go back to the beginning of the book, and you have to figure out where you went off track, and this can be painful. I know we all have this Sunk cost fallacy. When we're thinking of our books, it's very painful to go back to the beginning of the book and realize, oh, only the first 20 pages are good, and the last 100 pages that I've written were all off track. I'm sorry. I do this, and the only way to fix this problem is to delete the 100 pages. You can put them in a separate file somewhere if you want. So make you feel comfortable. Maybe you'll use them later. You won't, but tell yourself that for now. And then start writing from there, from page 20 again, and go in the right direction. Another thing I'm going to tell people is you're not telling the best part of the story. So beginning writers and all of us frequently get confused about what the important part of the story is. The important part of the story is your character developing and making mistakes. And sometimes we as writers don't want to talk about the mistakes part. Sometimes we want to gloss over what we think might be boring scenes about them figuring things out. You can't do that. And I will call you out and explain to you, okay, this section here where you have 2 pages explaining what happens, that needs to be a 40-page section. That will help you to figure out what is the most important part of your story, and it will help you figure out how to end and how to shape the plot of your story. The shape of the plot of your story is around the character's development. I'm going to help you with big picture problems. So a lot of writers have a problem where they focus sentence by sentence or paragraph by paragraph, and they want to like polish them and shine those paragraphs. And let me just tell you, doesn't matter how well you polish this manuscript if it has giant big picture problems. So one of the things that I sometimes ask people to do is, in addition to the 5 pages, send me a 1-page synopsis. And I can see a lot that may be wrong in big picture terms with a 1-page synopsis that you may not be admitting to yourself because you're busy looking at small picture kind of stuff. And the biggest problem that I see with writers is rejecting yourself. We do this in all sorts of stages. And I do it too. You would think, I know everybody thinks, oh, you're a big name author, you're successful, you have contracts on books that you haven't even written yet. Yeah, I face the same problems. This is why I am a good mentor for you. It's because I have dealt with all of the problems that you're dealing with, and I figure out ways around them. I don't pretend they don't exist. But the biggest problem is rejecting yourself before you have a chance to let other people reject you. You reject yourself on purpose because you figure it'll be less painful than other people rejecting you. I get that. It can be less painful. It's also a way of making sure that you will never be successful. You have to send things out. You have to be willing to get rejections from agents, from editors, sometimes maybe just from your writing group, sometimes from a friend. You have to be willing to let other people see it. You have to be willing to accept that when this gets published, some people won't like it. You will get bad reviews, I guarantee it. In fact, bad reviews are a sign that you've reached an audience of people that's wider than everybody who loves your book. That's what you need to do. Rejecting yourself first also sometimes means that you never sit down at the keyboard. Rejecting yourself first can mean that you finish a draft and you don't go back to it. This is one of my habits as an early writer, is that I would write first drafts and keep writing them over and over again. I would never get to the second draft stage. I didn't know how to do it, but one of the things I was doing was I was rejecting myself because I wasn't sitting down with the problems in the manuscript and actually being willing to deal with them. I wanted to go back to the first draft because first drafts were fun for me, and I got to play around and not worry about, fixing stuff. So whatever your special way is of rejecting yourself before you get rejected by other people, I'm going to talk you through that. And I'm going to get to a place where you're actually productive on a daily basis. I do expect a commitment from people of, an hour a day or, 2 to 3 hours on the weekends. Otherwise, there's not going to be a point to this. But if you can give me that commitment, I can make sure that you have a book finished. I'm not going to guarantee that it will happen in 10 weeks. My writing mentorship is in 10 weeks. Sometimes people take 2 to 3 of those sessions to get through a full manuscript, but that's often because they didn't get their shit done. I believe that in 10 weeks you can write a book. That's why I do the 10-week thing. Or if you can't write, if you're working on a second draft, I believe you can get through a second draft and get it ready to send to an agent or an editor. That's why I do what I do. I love helping people. I love to tell you about all the things your brain is doing behind the scenes to get in your way to make it so that you are not the writer that you should be. So give me a chance.